What if I told you that one of the strangest experiences almost every human being has isn't a dream, isn't a fear, and isn't even a memory, but a song? Not an entire song, not a full album. Sometimes just a few seconds. A short melody, a catchy chorus, a single line of lyrics, playing again and again and again inside your head. Perhaps you've experienced it yourself. You hear a song while scrolling through social media. Just a few seconds. Maybe not even a full minute. Then you continue with your day. You work, you study, you drive, you eat, you talk to friends. And then, hours later, without warning, the song comes back. The exact same part. The exact same melody. Repeating endlessly. As if your brain secretly pressed the replay button. What's even stranger? Sometimes it's not even a song you like. You didn't search for it. You didn't intend to memorize it. You weren't trying to learn the lyrics. And yet, it refuses to leave. Why? Why do certain songs become trapped inside our minds? Why does the human brain replay specific melodies over and over? Why do some songs disappear moments after we hear them, while others remain with us for days? And could it be that this strange phenomenon reveals something remarkable about the way our minds work? Tonight, we are diving into one of the most fascinating mysteries of psychology and neuroscience. A story involving memory, attention, music, emotion, evolution, and the hidden reasons why certain songs refuse to leave our heads. This is the story of why songs become earworms. To understand this phenomenon, we must begin with a simple truth. The human brain is a pattern-seeking machine. Every second, your brain receives enormous amounts of information. Sounds, colors, voices, movements, faces, words, sensations. If your brain treated every piece of information as completely separate, life would be overwhelming. So instead, the brain searches for patterns. Patterns help us understand the world more efficiently. And music is one of the most powerful collections of patterns humans have ever created. Rhythm, melody, repetition, harmony, tempo. All of these are patterns, and the human brain loves patterns. In fact, even before we learn language, we can respond to rhythm. Even before we understand words, we can recognize melodies. Music connects with some of the oldest systems in the human brain, systems that evolved long before modern civilization existed. But this raises an important question. If all music contains patterns, why do only certain songs become earworms? The answer begins with simplicity. Researchers have discovered that many earworms share similar characteristics. They are often simple, easy to remember, easy to sing, easy to predict. Think about some of the catchiest songs you've ever heard. They usually contain repeating choruses, simple melodies, short musical phrases, patterns that can be learned quickly. When the brain encounters a pattern that is easy to process, it stores it efficiently. And once that pattern is stored, it becomes easier to replay. This is one reason pop music often produces powerful earworms. Not because listeners are less intelligent, not because the music is somehow inferior, but because many popular songs are specifically designed to be memorable. Songwriters understand repetition extremely well. They know that repetition increases familiarity, and familiarity increases recall. The more easily a song can be remembered, the more likely it is to return later. But repetition alone does not explain everything. There is another fascinating factor involved: incomplete information. Imagine hearing only part of a song, a chorus, a hook, a short clip from a social media video. Then the video ends. The song never reaches a satisfying conclusion. Hours later, the melody continues repeating in your head. Why? This may be connected to something psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. The Zeigarnik effect suggests that people tend to remember unfinished experiences better than completed ones. The brain dislikes loose ends. It prefers closure. When something feels incomplete, the mind continues paying attention to it. In a sense, your brain keeps returning to the melody because it never fully finished processing it. The song becomes an unfinished mental task, and unfinished tasks tend to linger. Interestingly, this may explain why short-form content platforms are so effective at creating earworms. Most clips use only the catchiest part of a song, just enough to capture attention, not enough to create closure. The result? Millions of people walking around with the same melody trapped inside their minds. But perhaps the most surprising aspect of earworms is when they appear. Have you noticed that songs often return when you're not actively concentrating? During a shower, while washing dishes, walking alone, driving, lying in bed, waiting in line? Why these moments? The answer may lie in something called the default mode network. This is a system in the brain that becomes active when we are not focused on a demanding task. When your mind is free, it begins wandering. It revisits memories, imagines the future, processes experiences, makes associations, and sometimes it replays music. Think of it this way. When your attention is occupied by difficult work, there is little room for random melodies. But when your mind has spare capacity, songs can easily drift into awareness. In many cases, earworms are not interrupting your thoughts. They are becoming your thoughts. But there is another powerful ingredient: emotion. Because music is not just sound. Music is emotional information. A song can remind you of a person, a place, a period of your life, a relationship, a feeling, a memory. And the brain pays special attention to emotionally significant experiences. Imagine hearing a song that was popular during your teenage years. Suddenly, memories begin flooding back. Old friends, old conversations, old dreams, moments you had forgotten. The song becomes more than music. It becomes a doorway. And because emotional memories are often stronger than ordinary memories, the songs attached to them can become incredibly persistent. This is one reason why people sometimes remember songs from decades ago. Songs they haven't heard in years. Songs whose lyrics they thought they had forgotten. Then suddenly, they hear a few seconds, and everything returns, almost instantly. But emotional connection isn't always necessary. Even brand new songs can become earworms. And this brings us to another fascinating discovery. The brain loves a balance between predictability and surprise. If a song is completely predictable, it becomes boring. If it is completely unpredictable, it becomes confusing. The most memorable songs often exist somewhere in the middle. They give the brain enough structure to follow while introducing occasional surprises to maintain attention. Unexpected notes, interesting rhythms, unique vocal phrases, small twists that make the listener curious. The brain enjoys solving these musical puzzles. And the more attention a song receives, the more likely it is to remain in memory. Now let's talk about the modern world, because technology has dramatically changed the way earworms spread. A few decades ago, people primarily heard music through radio, television, CDs, or live performances. Today, music is everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, advertisements, video games, streaming platforms, public spaces. And perhaps most importantly, people are constantly exposed to the catchiest parts of songs. Not the entire composition, just the hook, the section designed to grab attention immediately. This creates the perfect conditions for earworms. Millions of brains receive the same memorable fragments, again and again, every single day. And because these fragments are often incomplete, the brain continues replaying them long after exposure ends. But perhaps the most remarkable part of all this is what earworms reveal about the human mind. Think about what is actually happening. Your brain hears a melody, stores it, reconstructs it, and then plays it back internally, without speakers, without headphones, without any external sound. The music exists entirely inside your mind. In a sense, your brain becomes its own music player, a device capable of reproducing sound using memory alone. And the same systems involved in earworms are connected to imagination, creativity, memory, prediction, and learning. In other words, the very mechanism that causes songs to get stuck in your head is closely related to some of humanity's most remarkable mental abilities. Of course, earworms can sometimes be annoying, especially when the same chorus repeats for hours. Fortunately, research suggests several ways to reduce them. One method is surprisingly simple. Listen to the entire song. If the problem is caused by an incomplete mental loop, finishing the song may help provide closure. Another strategy is to engage in a mentally demanding activity. Reading, problem solving, meaningful conversation. Anything that fully occupies attention. Because earworms tend to thrive in unused mental space. But perhaps the deepest lesson hidden within this phenomenon is not about music at all. Earworms remind us that the human mind is never truly silent. Even when the world becomes quiet, the brain remains active, searching for patterns, revisiting memories, creating connections, constructing meaning. And sometimes, all of that incredible activity appears in a surprisingly simple form. A melody, a lyric, a few seconds of music, repeating endlessly. So the next time a song becomes trapped inside your head, remember this. It is not merely a random annoyance. It is evidence of something extraordinary. Evidence that your brain is constantly learning, constantly organizing information, constantly building patterns from the world around you. Because in the end, earworms are not really about songs. They are about memory, attention, emotion, and the remarkable ways the human mind processes experience. A few notes, a few words, a few seconds of sound, and somehow they become powerful enough to follow us for hours, days, or even years. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful things about being human, the ability to hear music long after the music itself has stopped.